pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. All right. Who's coming up for guests in 50/50? No guests? All right. How about 50/50? That sounds like we had a super salesperson. That's really nice. Check in.
S reader 439. 439.
Mr. Norton, you're the greatest greeter ever.
Great. Happy dollars.
Way to go.
Exactly.
Anybody happy this morning? Funny.
Thank you. Okay, you want to vote? Our first grant of the three has been approved. Okay, so dental is on. And as you've heard a lot about Uganda, I was just saying that if it's not safe, we won't go. But so far, not one person out of 70 on the team has said they aren't going. So it looks like we will, hopefully it'll be all gone. It's only a few things, and we've dealt with that before. So we have two more in the process. We've answered all their questions, and now we're waiting for the final approval for those. But thank you to the club for all your support. And it looks like it's going to be a fabulous project. I didn't go to the convention because I'm too busy with other things. And I wanted you to know that on the last week, you should all come to Rotary on the 30th, because I have a present for everyone who will be here. Bill Garash and I will be greeters, and we'll be greeting you with the prize.
Very good. Very good. All right. Very nice. Appreciate
Thank you.
First, we are hosting a Chinese professor from Southern University of Science and Technology, and she is a very young woman. Is doing the research in Amish community for Amish agriculture and environment.
Nice.
So we took them to the backyard of the Amish, and she said, "Rosia, this is the picture I saw in the book. We never know the community we're living in impact for the world."
Yeah.
I found days from 1927, York Rotary Club, president's picture from our office archive, York Art Association. I made the copies and I love to share with you. And then maybe Louis, what you saw from the picture.
Well, this is my start. Maybe I'm like a little preparation there.
Yeah, excellent. Very nice. All right. Anybody else? Andy.
I'm happy that America 250 is almost here, and I'd like to invite anybody who's looking for things to do to come to the York Expo Fairgrounds Center on the 4th of July from 9 a.m. to noon. There's going to be a lovely cultural fair with a lot of community organizations and free donuts for the first 250 people. So if you're looking for something fun to do to celebrate America 250, please think about coming to the fairgrounds.
Excellent. Very nice. And I have a happy dollar to thank Andy for all of her help. She was kind enough to answer my email. I was looking for logos for our golf tournament signs. So thank you so much, Andy. You always come through. So, all right. We have birthdays and anniversaries. This month, Blair Ansel and Pete Lutz each share a birthday for June the 11th, which is, I believe, Thursday. And Chris Izzo's birthday is the 15th, which would be Monday. So congratulations. Anniversaries, we have quite a few. Connie Sparks celebrates 30 years this month. Cher Condor celebrates 26. Elizabeth Wolf, you're at 22 years. I am celebrating 12 years in the club. Mark Hodgkinson, Crystal Perry, Meredith Schreckler, Lisa Strickler, and Byron Thompson all celebrate their first anniversary. So congratulations to everybody. Round of applause. All right, if you all remember, we had a speaker that was scheduled for May the 26th on Falconry, and he was a no-show. So he evidently thought we met at 7:30 p.m., not 7:30 a.m. So I'm sure we'll see him on the schedule again at some point. But we did have a really nice impromptu program where our club members talked about how they came to York. So we only got through about half of the club. So we're going to schedule that for part 2 on June the 23rd. So in 2 weeks, I am going to ask you to limit it to about 2 minutes each so that we can get everybody in. But it was really interesting. And I think that's one of the nicest things about an impromptu meeting is learning more about our club members. So the golf tournament is next Tuesday. Keep in mind, if you're not playing golf, we are looking for volunteers. As I mentioned, there are sign-up sheets going around. The majority of them are in the morning, like 8 o'clock or so. There's a few that start at 9. So if you fill in the sheet that's coming around, we will get back to you by next Monday with the exact time and everything else. Diana is on vacation without Wi-Fi, so I have to wait for her to get back into the country. So we're doing very well on sponsors. Currently, we have 37 sponsors and we have 16 groups of golfers. So that's really, really great. So I want to thank everybody again for all your help, assistance, sponsorships, and everything else that you've accomplished, helped us accomplish. If you have, it's still not too late to sign up as a golfer if you'd like. Just let me know. As I said, Diana is out of the country, but I'm always available. So we are looking for a few more. If you have something that you want to raffle or donate for a raffle or an auction item, you can also see me. And that's about it for the golf tournament. I did want to mention that our dues will increase as of the 1st of July by $5. So we're going from $175 to $180. And that's because the dues for Rotary International increased by that same amount. So just giving you a little bit of a heads up. We have district governor installation on Thursday, June the 25th at the Sinkhole Grill and Saloon in Palmyra. It's a bowling place. So it sounds like it could be a little bit of fun and pleasure. Elizabeth will be inducted as our district governor nominee. Okay, I think I got that right. So if anybody wants to go or would like to join me, then let me know. And that's about it. So I apologize for running a little bit late with the meeting, but I think we're ready for our own Lisa Strickler. So Lisa, come on up.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about clinical research. So I will tell you a little bit about myself. So I am a registered nurse and I also have an MBA, which is an unusual combination, but my MBA is with a focus in healthcare because healthcare is a big business and You should probably realize that if you've ever got an explanation of benefits from your physician's office. I grew up in Lancaster County. Another fun fact is that I went to Mennonite school. I am not a Mennonite, but I was the last of three girls, and my mother got a job at the public school when I went to kindergarten and was like, no, we'll have none of that. And so I ended up going to Mennonite school. When I graduated from nursing school, I worked for about a year. And about a year after I graduated from nursing school, Desert Shield, Desert Storm was going on. And the federal government had moved many of its European medical personnel to the Middle East. So they didn't have coverage for their hospitals and clinics in Europe because their military members were deployed to the Middle East. So they offered a program that you could be a civil servant and work in their hospitals for the Department of the Army. So I had a huge wanderlust when I graduated from college, and the minimum requirement was 1 year of experience, which I just eked under the wire, and I moved to Germany, much to my mother's horror. I've been in research since 2002. I work for a contract research organization. The name of the company that I work for is purposely not on this slide. If I would have put it on the slide, I would have had to get marketing approval, and it would have taken me another year to be here. But I will explain a little bit later what a contract research organization does. I am responsible for a team of people in North America, South America, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And our jobs are to make sure that the right people get into the right study. So every study has a protocol, and the protocol requires the participants to have inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria, meaning you have to have some things to participate in the study, and you can't have other things to participate in the study. So a good example of this might be if it is a hypertension study, the inclusion criteria might be that you have a blood pressure consistently of 150/90 or greater. And an exclusion criteria might be that you don't have diabetes because it might confound the results. So every study has those inclusion, exclusion criteria who can participate. So we have a little class participation. So we're going to have some trivia questions. Your first trivia question is, have all the medications that I may take, whether they are prescribed to me or over-the-counter medication, have they gone through clinical trials? So how many people think that's true? Raise your hand. How many people think it's false? Well, it's a trick question because you're both kind of right. So all of medication goes through clinical research trials. So whether it's Tylenol or it's tetracycline, all of them have gone through clinical research. What hasn't gone through clinical research, that might surprise you, is anything that is a vitamin. So vitamins are not considered pharmaceuticals. Vitamins are considered nutraceuticals. So they have to pass the same kind of pressure testing that food does. So in like a nutraceutical that you might pick up, like a bottle of vitamins, the only thing that they have to prove is that it's safe for human consumption, not that it has any particular effectiveness. So, they're both kind of right. So trivia question number 2, I have noticed in my year here that many of you are fascinated by World War II. So do you know, does anybody in this room know the connection between World War II and clinical research? Catherine.
They had a population that couldn't say no.
Yeah. Right. So, in the Nuremberg trials, there were, I think it was like 23 physicians that were found guilty and prosecuted out of the Nuremberg trials because they did horrible, horrible research on people. And research for no other reason than a very morbid curiosity. And many of these people suffered, and many of these people died for no apparent reason. So, what came out of the Nuremberg trials, we refer to as the Nuremberg Code, and we are still bound by it today. And those principles are that we protect our patients, that we keep our patients safe, that we inform our patients. So before they participate in anything, they must be fully informed, and that the patient can stop the research anytime they want to. And so we are bound by those codes all these years later. And some other things came out of it, like GCP, which is good clinical practice, those kind of things. But the main principle that came out of World War II and the Nuremberg trials are that we protect our patients. Question number 3. If you participate in a clinical trial, you're likely to get on a placebo and not a real drug. True or false? Okay, hands up for true. Hands up for false. Did you have a question or read?
No, I'm saying false.
Okay. So actually, the answer to that question today is a little bit different than it might have been years ago. So for today, if you have, let's say, let's go back to hypertension because most of you have a good idea of hypertension. So today, if we are trying to bring a new drug to the market that treats hypertension, you will more than likely either get, in a clinical research study, you will either get the standard of care, which is the drug that we typically use for hypertension, or you will get the study drug and the standard of care. Many studies don't even have a placebo arm anymore. So let's talk about the phases of a clinical trial. So the first phase, or 0, is what we call bench research. So this is when you create a compound that you think will eventually become a drug. And so it's done in a laboratory without any kind of testing of any sort. It's just the manufacturing and the idea of a drug and the compound development. So this is what a contract research organization does. So preclinical is usually done by a pharmaceutical company. So you can think of GSK or Lilly, any of those big pharmaceutical companies that you are familiar with. They have bench research scientists and big labs that develop these compounds. But the problem is that after these compounds are developed, they have to go through clinical trials with patients. And they usually have to occur on a somewhat global level. Most, let's take Pfizer, for example. Pfizer doesn't have the ability to perform that level of research across the globe. They don't employ people that do that. So at that preclinical stage between 0 and 1, they will hand that compound off to a contract research organization, who I work for. And then we will take it through all 3 stages of clinical study. We will give it to the FDA. The FDA will approve it or not approve it. If they approve it, then we give that compound back to Pfizer and then they commercialize it. So we actually do the clinical research for most pharmaceutical companies. We are probably the biggest pharmaceutical company that only does research that you've never heard of. So one thing that you'll notice across stages 1, 2, and 3 in clinical research is safety, safety, safety. And that's getting back to the Nuremberg Code. We need to make sure that our patients are safe, safe, safe. So in stage 1, most stage 1 clinical research occurs in what we call a research hospital. They're inpatient. There's not too many phase 1 facilities in the US. We, as a matter of fact, only have one phase 1 facility, and it's in Kansas City. And the patients that are there, it's the first time in van. So we are very concerned that the participants are safe. And so we put them inpatient in a hospital. If you ever get the opportunity to go to a phase 1 facility, and odds are you will never have that opportunity, it's a very unusual looking place in the fact that it is a full hospital, It has ORs, it has diagnostic centers, it has everything to make sure that we keep our patients safe. The only thing it doesn't have is an emergency room because nobody's coming in as an ED patient. So in phase 1, they're small studies. There are usually 10 to 80 participants so that we can understand that this drug is safe to move on to 2. So once you get to phase 2, these are actually done in typical clinical research areas. So some of the bigger research in this area is done at Hershey and Johns Hopkins. They have very big research components to their facilities. When we're at phase 2, we're really looking at, once again, safety, but we're looking at dosing. So what does the dose of this drug need to be? And it takes somewhere between 100 to 300 participants to go through this phase of clinical study. And so we're doing things like saying, okay, do we need it to be 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams? Do we need it to be 50 milligrams, but 25 milligrams in the morning and 25 milligrams in the evening? So we're playing around with dosing. Like what is the optimum dosing? When we get to phase 3, this takes anywhere from between 300 to 3,000 participants. And really what we're looking for there is efficacy. So years ago, the FDA used to let any drug come through that treated the problem. Now the FDA says you have to be superior to what's on the market, or you have to treat a subsegment of the market that doesn't really have a choice because they don't want a ton of Me Too drugs on the market. So at phase 3, when we're looking at efficacy, we're looking to see, is this superior to anything else that's on the market? Or is this treating a subsect of the market that doesn't have a treatment arm? You can think of, like, when you think about that, think about cancer. Because there are patients that are non-responding to drugs that are on the market. So that would be a subsegment that doesn't have an option. So those 3 phases of clinical research take years and years and years to go through. Because each participant has to complete the protocol time frame, which is sometimes 6 months, sometimes up to a year. So it takes a long time to get all these people through. And at every stage, 1, 2, and 3, we have something called interim analysis, where we take a look and we say, this drug has a chance of getting approved, or this drug does not have a chance of getting approved, and we stop it there. Because there's no use in spending that kind of money to have the FDA give you a thumbs down. So that's another poorly understood part about clinical research. People will often say, we falsify data to get drugs approved. We go through interim analysis and we will end studies if they aren't meeting endpoints. And for us, a contract research organization, we don't have a dog in the fight because we don't get any of the proceeds once the FDA approves it and it gets commercialized. So we don't have any reason to falsify data. And then phase 4 is what we call real world clinical studies. So this is after drugs get approved. We continue to follow people who have been prescribed this drug to make sure that there aren't any unforeseen side effects that we didn't pick up in clinical research. So that's why if you ever take a drug and you say, oh my gosh, call my doctor, I broke out in a rash from head to toe, I can't take this drug anymore. Your doctor will take you off that drug, but your doctor will also report that to us because we need to know when patients are breaking out into rashes, if this is, a very rare but occasional event, or if we've got 50% of our people in a rash. So did you know that in the United States, we have more than 40% of our population that is either uninsured or underinsured? And this means that financial constraints for these individuals dictate the medical care that they'll get. They either can't afford out of pocket, they can't afford copay, they can't afford deductible, they can't afford to see a specialist, they can't afford drugs that are prescribed to them. So more than 40% of our population is in that situation. And there is a misconception that these are people that are unemployed and indigent. That's not true because most people that are below a certain threshold financially can get on Medicaid. So they do have coverage. Who we're talking about is the working class poor. So we're talking about the people who bag your groceries, make your coffees, clean your hotel rooms, can't afford basic health care in the United States. And so what happens when you can't afford health care? Well, many of these people end up in free or sliding scale clinics where their healthcare is either free to them, or if it's sliding scale, they only pay what they can afford to pay. You're not going to see a specialist there. You're not going to have diagnostic testing that is expensive there. You're going to get bare bones, and you are going to get prescribed medication that is generally free or generic equivalents that are pennies on the dollar. So everyone who works in research in my organization has a therapeutic area that they focus on. So my big therapeutic areas are autoimmune and women's health. And so I work with a lot of people that have Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, those kind of things. And when they end up in these free and sliding scale clinics, they just get prescribed gobs of prednisone, which is terrible for you. But it's all they can afford. And it will, to some degree, control the symptoms while it's doing other damage to other systems in your body. So what is the outcome for these people? Well, people just keep getting sicker and sicker in the United States. Because if you're treating it free and sliding scale, nobody is monitoring outcomes. One of the things that might surprise you about your own physician is if you do have insurance and you are seeing your own personal physician, the amount of money that your physician is paid or reimbursed for your visit depends on patient outcome. So your doctor is incentivized heavily to keep you healthy. If you are treating at a free and sliding scale clinic, there is no incentive to keep you healthy. They might want to, but they can't prescribe what you need to be healthy anyway. So clinical trials are an avenue to care for many of these people. Patients, let's get back to patients that have Crohn's disease. Patients that have Crohn's disease need to be treated by a specialist. They need to have endoscopies. They need very expensive medication. If these patients enroll in a clinical trial, their care by the specialist is free. Their diagnostic testing is free. Their medication is free. And they also, because they're a part of a clinical study, usually have to see the physician at least twice a month. All that is free to them. We actually even will provide transportation to and from their home to the research facility. If that is a hardship for them, we'll either provide it or they may have a stipend. Gosh, can't read my slide. Many studies will provide open label extension. So that means if you're on a clinical study and the drug really helps you and you're doing phenomenally on it, and then the drug gets approved because you participated in that study, oftentimes the pharmaceutical company will continue to provide that medication for free to you because you participated and helped them across the finish line for years. So we talked a little bit about my responsibility, and it's to get the right patients in the right studies. But oftentimes what's really challenging about that is if you go to your physician and you say, you know what, I would like to participate in a clinical study for my hypertension. I will bet you $20 right now that your physician, unless you're in a research facility, is not going to know what kind of clinical research is going on about hypertension. Unless you work in research, you're blissfully unaware of the research studies that are going on around you. So it's my job to help educate, which is my name tag says educate. It is my job to help educate physicians and practices about clinical research that may benefit the patient population that they see. And there are many reasons why people might want to participate in clinical research. Sometimes they want to participate in clinical research because it just makes them angry how much their drugs cost. Sometimes they want to participate in clinical research because although they're controlled on their medication, they're not optimally controlled. So they still have problems and side effects and issues. And sometimes it is an avenue to care for people, which is really why I am passionate about my job, because we are in a healthcare crisis. If we have more than 40% of our population who can't afford to go to a doctor, then they need some sort of avenue to care so that they can live longer and healthier lives. I think all people deserve that as a basic being part of one of the richest countries in the world. And the last thing I'll leave you with is if you want to know yourself what clinical trials are going on around you, there's a website called clinicaltrials.gov, and you can go on it and you basically fill out the therapeutic area that you're interested in, like hypertension, the zip code of where you live, and it will bring up all the studies that are in your area for the therapeutic area that you're looking for. Any questions? Go ahead.
There's many, but one is when COVID came, because we were all lost in space, we were forced to get vaccinations that were not approved. We had this time that we knew this was not approved. Whatever adverse effects we had, including this, nobody was responsible but we ourselves as the patient. So there was no redress for anything. We were really in space. We were in limbo, we didn't know where to go. Have any of these vaccinations since been approved, or are they still somewhere in space?
So they have been approved, and in the beginning, when you're talking about, they had like what we call like an emergency approval, which is a full FDA approval. But since that time have, and one of the interesting things about COVID vaccines now is we have given more COVID vaccines out across the globe than we've given doxycycline, because there's like almost everybody across the globe has had at least one dose of it. So if you remember, like in the phase 4 part of the clinical studies where we follow people post commercialization, there is a ton of phase 4 data. So yes, it's been approved. Yes, it's safe. Are there side effects? Sure. Yes. There are side effects to many drugs. So that's a very long answer to your short question. Sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned the case of Pfizer. The major pharmaceutical companies do not do their own clinical research. They in essence hire you and then you bill them for that.
Yes.
Is there a difference between a large, well-funded pharmaceutical company and a startup company getting the clinical research done on their product?
Absolutely. So, Pfizer has money to burn. We have these small startups which fall under biotech. That basically it's an all or nothing thing. We've got one compound, it either makes it or it doesn't make it. So we have a division of my company that's biotech that will do the clinical research for those kind of companies. And what we do is we help fund them. And in exchange for that, when the drug is approved, they owe us money back with considerable interest. So yeah, we do support them. And honestly, what we often see in biotech is it'll get to phase 3, a clinical study, and it'll be like a very promising looking drug. And then one of the big pharma companies will buy it.
How do you control the doctor putting people into the things? Because basically every time I go to my regular doctor at my age, they put me through everything and then they write on my report that she's fine, there's nothing you can find. But then I'm not on any drugs, then having conditions, okay? But then I start getting a million calls from the office trying to put me on this or that. And I said, why are you calling me? They said, well, you could have a heart attack in 10 years. I said, my age, why did I take medication for 10 years that I'm the hardest anyway? Okay. So in the meantime, finally, after turning them down for 5 years, over maybe 20 times they called me to try and put me into some kind of a case, which I thought probably was to make them, balance better. Okay. They called me and said, okay, now we will have one with genetics. Your parents were wrong, your family was wrong. So probably the reason you're healthy is because it's clean might be genetics. So would you like to join that group and do that, for a period of time? And I always turn them down. But why do you put people into these test groups that have nothing wrong with them to prevent something for 10 years from now and make them take a drug if they don't get a placebo, okay? And as you're saying, at this point, probably not. They're getting the old ones a new one. Why would I take that medication? Why would I volunteer to be on that kind of test?
So it is entirely up to you. But on some studies, we need healthy participants. So we need healthy participants that do not suffer from an issue and participants who do suffer from an issue to do comparators. So some studies are healthy participant studies who need to be enrolled. I will say though, I'm going to answer your questions in 2 ways, one from a nursing perspective, one from an MBA perspective. So as a nurse, your healthcare provider wants to keep you as healthy as possible for as long as possible. For an MBA perspective, your doctor wants to be fully reimbursed by keeping you healthy and having good patient outcomes. And so most insurance companies will look at patient outcomes for the overall practice and make sure that patients are healthy, that the physician is treating basically that he's doing his job. So I don't know what incentivizes your doctor, if your doctor is more incentivized by you as an individual or what he's getting reimbursed, but he's very concerned with you being healthy for as long as possible. Go ahead.
We had this discussion this morning about choice in vulnerable populations. And when you talked about
the population that really does a lot of these trials. And the fact of, World War II and not being able to say no. Can we truly say that we're much better? Are they truly able to say no when the choice of getting good doctors, good medicine versus a walk-in clinic where they're getting the very lowest standard of care? Can we truly say, as the wealthy country that we are, that this is truly a choice?
It's an argument to be made. And I guess the answer is that we will never be able to have a potential patient population that participates in clinical studies that is not incentivized by something like that, without completely overhauling our own healthcare system within our country. We come to the situation in the sense of, they have the ability to say yes or no, and we give them something that's called an informed consent. So we have to inform them of everything before they consent. But yeah, and from my perspective, I am just trying to get people healthcare. But yeah,
this was not on you. I'm just wondering as a whole.
it's true.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you're in a trial and it's obviously very successful, is there a stage where you switch everyone over to the new drug? Or do you regulate runs its course and never tell the people on the regular?
So if you are participating in a clinical study and you get through stage 3, generally what will happen is at stage 3, we're talking about thousands of participants. And so we know based on 1, 2, and now getting predominantly the way through 3, we have a pretty good feeling if the FDA is going to approve these drugs. What happens many times is in that bridge period of time between finishing an approval, that's when the open label extension will kick in, and we'll continue to provide these study drugs to the participants in anticipation of the FDA approving it. And then after the FDA approves it, if you participated in the clinical study and you have a difficulty in affording the commercialized drug, they will continue to give it to you for free for several years.
Even the people that weren't on the drug in the first place.
Yes, we'll do open label extension for them as well because they participated.
One last question.
Go ahead.
And is a very effective cancer fighter. It's also highly toxic. And it destroys, eventually will destroy liver and kidneys. I just wonder, when a drug like that is FDA approved, maybe FDA approved maybe 6 years ago, do they issue those warnings? Does the patient become aware of the potential for that drug to really take a toll on the body?
Yes. So drugs come with something called a certain class of drugs comes with something called a black box warning or a box warning. And those drugs have a side effect profile that is so significant that the FDA has said, we will approve this, but we need to make it crystal clear that these are really bad side effects. And so that the patients that are prescribed them are fully aware of the side effect profile. And it is the most severe side effect profile that will be approved by the FDA, and it has to come with a box warning. I will tell you all, there are many drugs out there that have a box warning that people don't think about. One of the black box warning drugs, class of drugs, are the GLP-1. Everybody loves the GLP-1s, but they have a significant side effect profile. So you should understand that before you hop into some of these drugs of what the side effect profile is.
Thank you.
Good questions. So thank you very much. All right, thank you so much, Lisa. That was very informative and very understandable, which is probably the most important thing. So thank you. We do have That also counts as a classification speech personally. So we're going to check that off your membership list, the do list. We do have a book for you to choose that will be donated to the Children's Library at the YWCA. So we'll get that, you choose that as before you leave this morning. All right. Don't forget, next week is the golf tournament. If you're able to help, make sure you signed up. And if you think about it and still want to help, you can always email me. All right, everybody, we're adjourned. Have a great day.